an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you. Always.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, the Star Wars show, and I'm your host, Jon Justice. Thank you so much for checking out another episode. As always, if you happen to be listening on YouTube, like and subscribe. Hit the alerts on YouTube to get notified whenever new videos pop up. And, of course, whatever platform you happen to be listening on, go and make sure you follow the show there as well. And you can email Justice. Nope, that's the wrong email. You can email TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. I give out so many email addresses, I forget which show that I'm doing at any given point in time. TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. So a relatively short show this week, just a few items to share and some listener feedback. Let's start off here. A lot of talk as we close out this year. What can we expect for next year? Now, when you look at the slate of what we were anticipating to come out in 2024. You've got potentially Bad Batch. You've got another season of Tales of the Jedi, Season 2, and/or Season 2, The Acolyte, and Skeleton Crew. That's what was on the slate to come out next year. Now, a lot of things have changed. We were supposed to get Skeleton Crew this year, and as I reported on last week's show, it looks like that Mandoverse show about a group of kids who end up off on their own adventure with a former Jedi played by Jude Law. It looks like that potentially may not be coming out until the holidays next year, which I find really strange from the standpoint of, well, what will be strange about that is how young the cast is, and when you consider the length of time between the completion of that show, because that show's done, and when it comes out, when we get to do, when they get out doing promotion for the show, all of the, all the young actors and actresses are going to look considerably older. Listen, it's an irrelevant point as it relates to the show in and of itself and its quality. I just think it's going to be an interesting aspect when they go to promote the show and the cast is going to be visibly older than what we actually are seeing in the show. At the moment, the only shows that we have confirmation that we're actually going to be getting next year at this point in time is The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. We have no confirmation yet on whether or not and/or Season 2 is coming next year. We do know that they were down to the last few episodes when the strike hit, so conceivably that show should be finished. There has been some smattering of talk online that the Bad Batch Season 3 will still be coming out next year, and just because we have received confirmation from Lucasfilm that Skeleton Crew and Acolyte are coming out next year, but not confirmation of things like Tales of the Jedi, the Bad Batch Season 3, and/or Season 2, doesn't mean they're not coming. It just means that they haven't confirmed them as of late. That being said, there's also some speculation that we could still get some major Star Wars release news later on this month, or at least within the next few weeks. Jeff Snyder on the Hot Mic podcast said that there is Star Wars stuff sitting in the wings and that news could come out later on this month about what that could be. Now, we have received information in years past in December, and like I mentioned last week, I mean, typically we'd be in the middle of a promotion of a film that would be releasing within about a week or so, and unfortunately that's just not the case right now. So ultimately, everything seems in flux, and that's not a good thing in my opinion. So let me get to another news item, and I want to share a few thoughts on why I'm concerned at the moment for the future of Star Wars.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Certainly, Disney is in a really bad spot as it relates to their IPs at the moment. And talked about this last week. I'm not going to go over old ground, but the movies that they've been putting out had not been landing they have not been box office hits by any stretch. And when you look at IPs that seemed bulletproof, like a superhero, look at your Marvel movies, and they're not. I think people are burned out. We haven't even watched Loki in this household yet, and when I approached the family to go and do so, nobody seemed interested. We didn't finish Secret Invasion either. I'm hearing that they're doing massive reshoots on the next Captain America film, which of course will be the one with the new Captain America. My fear is, where does Star Wars go from here? I've made no secret my love of Ahsoka. I think they did a fantastic job on that show, but the second season hasn't been officially greenlit, and we don't know when that Mandoverse movie is coming out yet. In the meantime, some of the other live-action releases have not been up to snuff, and we're now several years away from the last live-action film in The Rise of Skywalker, a movie that I still love to this day as one of my favorite Star Wars films, but obviously was incredibly divisive and a letdown to a lot of fans, and The Last Jedi goes without saying. There was rumors that the production on the new Daisy Ridley-led Star Wars film that would be taking place 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker would begin in April of 2024. Now it turns out, according to a story from Star Wars Newsnet, is that may not be the case. The script is reportedly not ready yet, and due to delays caused by the strike, they don't expect filming to start before the summertime. Now, this could still give us I don't think a 2025 release, but maybe a 2026 release. But all of this is to say that Lucasfilm and Disney need to land a hit. The way that the fandoms are right now, in my opinion, if they don't deliver whatever this next film is going to be, if they don't deliver a hit, it's going to turn a lot of people off on the franchise. I don't think Star Wars is going anywhere. I think that it would require some major shakeups if that were to take place. I'm curious when it comes to Bob Iger, some of the comments that he's made specifically on the failure of the Marvels film. He said in an interview very specifically that there weren't enough individuals that were there during the production to watch over what was going on, saying that it was taking place during COVID. And because of that, there weren't enough people that were hands-on to sort of point things in certain directions. Following Star Wars as I have and the creative process, I can tell you that it was clear that Bob Iger was pretty hands-on when it came to the production of certainly The Force Awakens and Rogue One. The Last Jedi, as we've heard so many times, that production went off smoother than any of the other productions, but we also know how divisive that film was. There was a level of care that was being placed on the Star Wars content being created by Disney in its inception. So what I mean by that is, like, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi as well. I love The Rise of Skywalker, but I'm going to leave that out of this conversation. When you look at The Force Awakens, when you look at when you look at The Last Jedi, when you look at Rogue One, and certainly with Rogue One and The Force Awakens, there was a lot of changes that took place, screenwriters and writing on the fly during the production of that. We know Tony Gilroy came in and did all these different things to Rogue One, but we also got these amazing pieces of cinema out of that, out of those little controversies and those changes that took place. Even when you go back, or at least for me, when I go back and watch Mandalorian, the first season, there's a level of care that was on that first season that I think kind of slipped away as seasons went by. And I'm doing a commentary that I've done before, all to say that with the next batch of content they create, they need to get back to making sure that they're taking good care of this. And also, they're under a lot of pressure, understandably so, because, fans like me who have parents that, brought their kids, right? That part of the fandom's getting older. They're trying to usher in a new part of the fandom. And that's why I'm hearing The Acolyte is taking precedent over a lot of other releases. Like The Acolyte is their big release for next year. Jason Ward on the MakingStarWars.net podcast was talking about this in Bespin Bulletin, which is one of the best sources online to go and find out the rumors of what's happening with the films. He's recently released some of the names of the characters in Skeleton Crew. They're just names, nothing worth going on about. Still interesting nonetheless. But from what they're being told from their inside sources is that The Acolyte is really what they're hinging on next year. And that makes sense because there's such a focus in the books that have been released when it comes to the High Republic. And this is going to be the first High Republic era show. And I think that they know they've got a good show on their hands. I also think that speaks to the next generation of fans that they need to bring about to carry on, with the fandom and the podcasts, like I'm doing, and the next generation of individuals that will do them as well. I know we're heading into the holiday season. Hopefully we get some good nuggets of information. I've been enjoying my Star Wars watching as of late. It's become, as I mentioned last week, a Christmas tradition for me. I'm going to work through the sequel trilogy starting here this weekend. But I also listen to a lot of other Star Wars podcasts, and I know that it's very thin as it comes to content, and there's not a lot of mythology that they can chew on. And as I've mentioned so many times on this show, that's where I feel like Star Wars thrives, is in the mythology, giving the fans something that they can speculate on. And typically that goes with a film and characters that we're somewhat familiar with or new characters, and we need that in Star Wars. And unfortunately, it looks like that is still a long way off, and that's kind of a bummer. I hope they don't screw it up. I don't feel like they've screwed it up yet. I feel like Disney has kind of screwed up Marvel. I don't feel like they're there yet with Star Wars. I know a lot of other people do. I'm not saying it's not possible, but they need to course correct quickly to keep that from happening, because I would just be so sad to see Star Wars go through what they're going through with Marvel right now.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
TalkShowNerd@gmail.com is the email address. Ray2017 writes in this week, this might be a wild card of a candidate in terms of who's a better fit to direct Ray's film, and yes, this is also a controversial choice too, but the positives, they write, will definitely overshadow the negatives here. I truly think Rian Johnson is one of the more viable options. He's already worked for Lucasfilm before, and yes, he has his share of critics, but there are plenty of others in the fandom that admire what he did for The Last Jedi simply because he went in pretty confident about the movie he wanted to deliver and deliver strong and have a vocal response. And it's thanks to The Last Jedi that he has gone on to direct and also write a variety of other works, including Knives Out, and has gained Academy Award recognition. He's a rock star. He also understands Rey pretty well. He's done a phenomenal job with furthering developing Reylo's connection, which is and always will be the highlight of The Last Jedi. His passion for the franchise and the mythology and the fantasy is every bit as identical as Dave Filoni's love and passion, and matches George Lucas's passion for what inspired him to do Star Wars. If we don't get Rian's trilogy, then at least he could do Rey's film. I choose him first than most of the characters who have directed MCU films in the last 3 years. The only other person that I would pick would be the showrunners for the Loki series, Part 2, of season 2 because they did such a great job with that season. I want to see Rian Johnson. I think a lot of people said this after the release of The Last Jedi. I want to see Rian Johnson go and play in the Star Wars world again, but with his own set of characters and his own story. I certainly wouldn't mind him tackling another film focusing on Rey by any stretch. But I also think for Rian Johnson to really be accepted by the fandom, he needs to go and do something that doesn't have any preconceived notions attached to it. I also don't see him doing Star Wars anytime soon just because he has so many other works, so many other projects in the works. And the same thing with Taika Waititi. He's out there talking about how he wants his Star Wars movie to evoke the feel of the original Star Wars, which had its level of humor in it. Based off of the more recent works by Taika Waititi, I've kind of lost faith in him. But he also said he's writing another 3 scripts before he goes and finishes Star Wars. So it looks like this Charmin Obaid-Chinoy Rey-led film post The Rise of Skywalker is taking place. And while this is an era and a film that I want to see made, because I want to see the timeline move forward, I'm going to say it now. I don't think that director ends up ultimately being the one to direct that film. They've already pitched off Damon Lindelof as the writer and brought in Stephen Knight. And I know that Charmin Obaid-Chinoy is currently the director, but if I had to venture a guess, they may start directing, but they will not end up being the director at the end of the day of that film. All right, that wraps up the show for this week. I wish I had more story stuff to talk about, but there's nothing going on right now. So, as I mentioned, I've been going through a rewatch of Ahsoka. Love that show. I'm going to be watching The Force Awakens this weekend. Do you have any Star Wars plans over the holidays? Drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. And until then, we'll see how the shows shake out for the end of this year. There definitely will be another show before the end of the year, absolutely. But we'll see what news shakes out between now and then. Hopefully we get some nuggets to talk about between now and the first of the year. Either way, I hope wherever you are, you're happy, you're healthy, and you are safe. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.